flood subsides, God says to Noah what he said to Adam and Eve before the flood, which is be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth and subdue it. And so the mandate from God was to procreate, and he allowed the animals to procreate, and they had to repopulate the entire planet Earth with purified DNA. Now, this is true. And this has everything to do with what's going on now. And this is why Jesus Christ said the words, and I developed this. I reveal stuff in the book, A Prophecy of the Future of America, because America's future is tied into this truth. And here's why. Jesus Christ said, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Jesus Christ was very methodically telling you and I that in the last days there was going to be a repeat of what happened in Noah's day. Now, what is it that happened in Noah's day? Well, there was two things. There was wickedness, perversion, and violence. God had to judge that. But also, in the day of Noah, or the days preceding the flood of Noah, the human race had been corrupted genetically, and the animal race had been corrupted genetically by sex with fallen angels on a massive scale. That's what Christ was talking about. The Benai Elohim. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Jesus Christ is saying that in the last days, prior to his return to planet Earth, there is going to be a massive resurgence of human women being impregnated by fallen angels and the return of the Nephilim. But Jesus Christ is also including in that definition the totality of what really happened prior to the flood, and that was the genetic alteration of the DNA of animals, because Christ was saying that in the last days that the animal DNA will once again be infected on a massive scale with the DNA of fallen angels. Now, this can happen through a variety of mechanisms. But one mechanism would be the fact that there are currently laboratories all over the world experimenting in the science of transhumanism. And what they're doing is interspecies breeding. And we know for a fact that they're joining the DNA of animals with human beings to create super soldiers and a superhuman race, because they want certain genetic attributes from animals like night vision and the ability to go long distances without sleep. So they're doing some very, very freaky genetic experimentation, like on the Island of Dr. Moreau type movie, where humans and animals are being mated genetically, okay? And the offspring is grotesque and bizarre, because some of the pictures have leaked out, and I saw it was the most hideous picture I think I've ever seen in my life. It was like a horror movie. It was a pig with a human's head, but the human's head was distorted because it was pig-like, and it was obvious that this must have resulted in the joining of pig DNA and human DNA. And there are many who believe that there is now access to Nephilim DNA that is being covered up in a tremendous secret. And so they believe there's the joining of Nephilim DNA and fallen angel DNA with human DNA and animal DNA. And so we have the words of Jesus Christ, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. In addition to that, we simply can have the fact that these fallen angels, or excuse me, these angels are coming to the earth in large numbers once again, impregnating human women and producing Nephilim. And the whole UFO, alien, ET thing plays a major role in that, because if you notice that in most of the narratives of the aliens and the ETs and the UFOs. People are saying that their bodily orifices, and I won't get into the specifics, are being explored by the aliens aboard spaceships, which implies the aliens playing around with their reproductive organs and all kinds of things. So that's that would fit in with the fallen angels, if the aliens are not really extraterrestrials in the sense of coming from another planet, but if the aliens are what Jacques Vallée, who was the scientist in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, referred to. He believed they were interdimensional beings, and many scientists believe that the great secret is that the aliens are not from other worlds, but they're from other dimensions, and thus they would be demons or interdimensional beings. And just like it was in the days before the flood, and this is what a lot of people don't understand, they have a massive fallacy in their thinking. The fallen angels, the fallen angels, when they descended to earth on Mount Hermon, which was near Phoenix in Phoenicia, and by the way, Phoenicia is connected to the planet Mars because the cities of Phoenicia, which would have been Cydonia, corresponds to Cydonia on Mars, and the face of Mars, and the so-called architecture on Mars. So you have corresponding cities in Phoenicia and Mars, and you also have Cairo, which is connected to Mars. And it's very interesting that the main thrust of our space exploration in terms of curiosity and where we plan to inhabit a planet, is the focal point is all on Mars, and there's a reason for that that I will get into. I'm getting into in the book, and hopefully I'll get into further on. Okay, so as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of coming the Son of Man. Now, the fallacy is this. The fallacy is that that fallen angels or demons cannot use and develop technology. The fact of the matter is, fallen angels have imparted to mankind, since their arrival before the flood, highly advanced mathematical equations. The fallen angels have imparted to man highly advanced scientific technologies, science, technology, and mathematics and mathematical equations, and Pythagorean theory, and all kinds of things. Mathematics that is way beyond the level of mathematics that we possess today. And so the fallacy, you see, if you analyze the reality of demons coming to the earth, and you remove from that reality the fact that demons develop technology and have access to technology and very advanced science, you miss a huge part of the story. It is precisely the evidence of the monolithic monuments that are all around planet Earth that survived the flood. The pyramids, the structures off of Cuba, which appear to be Atlantis, the pyramids in the jungles of South America, the pyramids off the coast of Bermuda, the Incan monuments, the monuments near Japan and China and all over the world. These monuments are so precise mathematically in terms of the way they interface with the stars, and the way they are built with such mathematical precision. There's no human explanation of how these massive stones could have been transported such massive distances and fit together with a symmetry and precision that we can't even produce today. And there's other there's other evidences of highly advanced science and mathematics in these pre-flood civilizations. Where did the human race get this from? They got them from the fallen angels who visited the earth, because these fallen angels were demons that had possession of technology and advanced knowledge. Now, we are on the precipice. And by the way, I have tons of free articles for you to read at my website, paulmcguire.org and paulmcguire.com. McGuire is M-C-G-U-I-R-E. The important thing to understand is that the flood wiped these civilizations out, but Plato and the ancient world, and Plato got information about Atlantis, understood the level of technological, scientific, and societal development of Atlantis. Plato and others understood that. It carried over. And the other thing is that this understanding of technology is essential, because when Jesus Christ says the words, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man, he's implying all that. Now, let's go back to Atlantis, and let's go back to Sir Francis Bacon in the mid-1600s, who was part of a secret occult society that was linked to the ancient mystery religions of the Tower of Babel. And let's go back to Nimrod. And he constructs that Tower of Babel, which means Gate of God. Now, Gate of God means that they were worshiping the host of heaven, and that Babel, or Babylon, was a cosmic portal which allowed for the entrance of fallen angels. That's what it was. It was a technological device. All these pyramids involve energy and technology. The technology that Nikola Tesla discovered in the 1800s was scalar technology that came from the fourth dimension. It was very powerful technology. EMF waves and all kinds of stuff. And it was covered up quickly by the U.S. government and others. But the technology that Tesla discovered was technology that was originally possessed by these ancient pre-flood civilizations. So, the pyramid at Giza has a mystery in it in terms of the mummies and the DNA in the mummies. Now, Sir Francis Bacon, and then there was an occult leader called Manly Hall who explained all this. And he's explaining the secret occult destiny of America. And he makes reference to the Phoenix. He makes reference to Roswell in 1947. And he talks about the European occult societies such as the Illuminati. And you have to understand that behind the scenes with all these global conflicts, you are not getting full disclosure. There are technologies available and being employed right now that are so far beyond the average person's ability to conceive that if I were to tell you about them, you would think I was rambling about science fiction. But no, they're not science fiction. They exist. And when Bacon was saying that America would be head of the New World Order and the New Atlantis, monuments are so precise mathematically in terms of the way they interface with the stars, and the way they are built with such mathematical precision. There's no human explanation of how these massive stones could have been transported such massive distances and fit together with a symmetry and precision that we can't even produce today. And there's other evidences of highly advanced science and mathematics in these pre-flood civilizations. Where did the human race get this from? They got them from the fallen angels who visited the earth, because these fallen angels were demons that had possession of technology and advanced knowledge. Now, we are on the precipice. And by the way, I have tons of free articles for you to read at my website, paulmcguire.org and paulmcguire.com. McGuire is M-C-G-U-I-R-E. The important thing to understand is that the flood wiped these civilizations out. But Plato and the ancient world, and Plato got information about Atlantis, understood the level of technological, scientific, and societal development of Atlantis. Plato and others understood that. It carried over. And the other thing is that this understanding of technology is essential, because when Jesus Christ says the words, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man, he's implying all that. Now, let's go back to Atlantis, and let's go back to Sir Francis Bacon in the mid-1600s, who was part of a secret occult society that was linked to the ancient mystery religions of the Tower of Babel. And let's go back to Nimrod. And he constructs that Tower of Babel, which means Gate of God. Now, Gate of God means that they were worshiping the host of heaven, and that Babel, or Babylon, was a cosmic portal which allowed for the entrance of fallen angels. That's what it was. It was a technological device. All these pyramids involve energy and technology. The technology that Nikola Tesla discovered in the 1800s was scalar technology that came from the fourth dimension. It was very powerful technology, EMF waves and all kinds of stuff. And it was covered up quickly by the U.S. government and others. But the technology that Tesla discovered was technology that was originally possessed by these ancient pre-flood civilizations. So, the pyramid at Giza has a mystery in it in terms of the mummies and the DNA in the mummies. Now, Sir Francis Bacon, and then there was an occult leader called Manly Hall who explained all this. And he's explaining the secret occult destiny of America. And he makes reference to the Phoenix. He makes reference to Roswell in 1947. And he talks about the European occult societies such as the Illuminati. And you have to understand that behind the scenes with all these global conflicts, you are not getting full disclosure. There are technologies available and being employed right now that are so far beyond the average person's ability to conceive that if I were to tell you about them, you would think I was rambling about science fiction. But no, they're not science fiction. They exist. And when Bacon was saying that America would be head of the New World Order and the New Atlantis, what this is laying the foundation for is genetic transformation of the human race so that the elite, or whoever they choose, can genetically breed a super race. That also implies that what is going on at the same time, because Aldous Huxley in his book Brave New World talked about this in detail in the form of a novel. But in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, this dystopian, futuristic, totalitarian society had used the science of eugenics, which was what Hitler was doing, to breed alpha, beta, delta classes of people. So they were deliberately breeding some people to be dumb slaves and others to be a little bit smarter slaves. And then the top class were genetically bred to be the rulers or the elite. That's going on right now. And most people don't understand that. That's part of this mystery. And that's why we see this architecture and these symbols, these occult symbols that were previously hidden prior to 2012 are now surfacing in places like the Olympics, like the pop music industry, in architecture, in films, because 2012 was what Aleister Crowley said would be the beginning of the new eon, A-E-O-N, the new age. And so the secret occult elite, which is ruling the world, because they are the forces of the Antichrist, and they're setting up society for the arrival of the Antichrist, if he's not already here. So the Antichrist can rule over this one world government, one world religion, one world economic system. Because the Bible talks not only of an Antichrist, but a false prophet who's head of a one world religion. And then, of course, there's the distribution of the mark of the beast, which comes, and you have to reject Christ and worship the Antichrist. And I talk about this in my free e-blasts and intelligence reports and books and DVDs and so on and so forth. All of this, everything that I've just described to you, is running on a parallel track with Bible prophecy. But notice the massive transformational change in public imagery and displays of symbols that are hardcore satanic and occultic in nature by pop musicians, by the Great Britain Olympics, which had satanic images all over it. I have free articles at paulmcguire.org and paulmcguire.com along with the pictures. They had satanic symbols everywhere. They had a mock Tower of Babel. They had Ashtoreth. They had Babylon. They had transhuman creatures. I could go on for just describing in precise detail. The whole world was bombarded with Luciferian satanic symbols and images. There was in former province of the Soviet Union, there's a city called Astana in Kazakhstan, and it's the first modern Luciferian occult city. I have pictures of it on my website, paulmcguire.org and paulmcguire.com. And he has built this city with oil money in the middle of nowhere, and every part of this city, it's like a futuristic occult city. It's got pyramids, which is an occult symbol. It's got this tower where he can put his hand, which is very demonic. And there's all this Luciferian and demonic architecture and symbols all over this massive futuristic city. And to top it all off, through Google Earth satellite search, they drew a giant satanic pentagram in northern Kazakhstan as kind of a message to the world that this is a city of Satan and Lucifer. This has never happened before, and it's happening on purpose. There's a convergence of Luciferian satanic forces, and they're coming out in the open. Now, I was at the in Los Angeles at the Dodgers game really recently, and it was a huge game. And, you know, they would do the television close-ups of the celebrities who were sitting in the stands. And there was a number of celebrities. But they did a close-up on the hip-hop entrepreneur Jay-Z, that every teenager knows who he is, and they know his relationship to big hip-hop, female hip-hop artists that he promotes. And in front of all these parents, at the beginning of the baseball game, he gives, on the close-up, with the camera staying on him, the Luciferian symbol of the Illuminati pyramid, which is on the back of the dollar. He's giving the sign of satanic worship openly. He does it all the time. And then he makes the gesture of the hand of the devil. Now, he's sending a message, and every kid gets it. The adults may not get it. But it's open Luciferian worship and imagery. You look at all the hip-hop videos by a variety of artists, and you see an escalation in sexual perversion. What's her name? Miley Cyrus. Okay? It's pornographic dance maneuvers. There's open Luciferian symbols of every kind, and unless you understand Luciferian symbols, which I explain in my free research at the website in my articles, you won't understand just how enormous the download is of satanic and Luciferian imagery. It's all over these videos. Not to mention monarch mind control openly being displayed, which is a whole different subject I don't have time to get into now, but I do deal with in my new book, Prophecy of the Future of America. And you see that children, beginning at 6 years old and younger, are receiving a massive download of ultra hyper sexual perverse images, S&M, bondage. I don't want to get descriptive, but you know what? I should get descriptive because your kids are looking at it. So if I'm hiding it from you as an adult to an adult, your kids are watching the full enchilada, no pun intended. Pornographic messages, girls in chains, whips, sex slaves. I mean, we're talking about threesomes. The biggest artist, one of the biggest hip-hop artists in the world, and many of you know this, is Minaj, coming from the French word ménage à trois, a threesome, a sexual threesome. And she sings openly, and I talk about it in my book, Prophecy of the Future of America. She sings openly about, she calls him Roman Zolanski, which is using the words Roman Polanski, who was the film director, and I talk about this in my book and my free articles. I expose the whole thing. Roman Polanski was the film director who did Rosemary's Baby. His actress wife was Sharon Tate, who was pregnant and murdered by the Charles Manson cult family in Southern California in a brutal murder. Rosemary's Baby, it is alleged, I have to be careful what I say, it is alleged that many of the actors and the key people involved in the film were members of a satanic cult. And let's leave it at that. Sharon Tate was brutally murdered. The building, which the movie Rosemary's Baby, this is an old movie, but it's about demonic possession. The movie's about, it's kind of a fallen angel as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming Son of Man theme, because it's about a satanic ritual which involves particular occult sexual rites, which implies a supernatural impregnation of a demon in a human womb to create the Antichrist. See, that movie dealt with it a long time ago. Now, that also relates, by the way, to Jack Parsons, who was what Wernher von Braun, the Nazi rocket scientist who founded NASA, they said he was the father of modern rocketry. And he had a mansion in Pasadena where he had wild orgies, and he was a disciple of Aleister Crowley and had an Aleister Crowley cult in Pasadena. But he was a brilliant rocket scientist, and he was involved in similar experiments in the creation of a moon child, according to Aleister Crowley's rituals. And I go into that in the book. So, back to Polanski, which Minaj is singing to your children. The movie was filmed in the Dakota building where John Lennon was killed in the exterior of that building. And there's a lot more to that. I'll just leave it there. for the moment. So why is Minaj singing about Roman Polanski, who, by the way, was thrown out of the United States for allegedly raping a 13-year-old girl? I won't describe the nature of the rape out of delicacy. And he was thrown out of the U.S. Why did all this happen? Why is Minaj showing you Illuminati symbols, satanic symbols? Jay-Z wears a t-shirt which says, "Do what thou will." That's the motto of Satanism that came from Aleister Crowley. Do what thou will means do whatever you want. That's the satanic commandment. Do whatever you want. Why are these musical artists promoting I could go down, Lady Gaga, Madonna. Some of you adults saw Madonna at the Super Bowl and you understood that there was some kind of occultic imagery going on, but I detail it in my book and I detail it on my website and stuff, but I expose it. She was doing a reenactment with a counterfeit seraphim in the Holy of Holies. She was wearing Viking attire, which alludes to the Nordic occult gods that the Nazi occult scientists were worshiping. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Why the download? I could name so many artists, Beyonce and others. This was going on in the rock and roll thing in the 70s too. It's just it's escalated. The escalation of open satanic Luciferian imagery everywhere. Why? It's at public events, it's at Super Bowls, it's at the Olympics, it's now being flaunted. Why is this? Because we are in, officially, according to the occult, the new age, or the new eon, which is the time of the reign of Lucifer. Now, why this is important, this wouldn't be important if it was not affecting your children and our society, but why this is important is because, and now if you go to a church which doesn't teach Bible prophecy, you're going to be clueless. You're going to be an airhead for Jesus. We have several million airheads for Jesus in the United States of America. They're useless. You know, I'm going to say this because it needs to be said. Jesus Christ said to the Laodicean church, which is basically the evangelical church in America, the majority of it. There are exceptions. But Jesus Christ said to the Laodicean church, which represents the spiritual condition of the church in America, he said, "It would be better if you were hot or cold, but because you're lukewarm, I will vomit you out of my mouth." That was Christ's reaction to the Laodicean church, which is the church in America. You have to understand that the disciples of Lucifer in America are serving Satan with complete dedication. They are serving him fervently, whereas the disciples of Jesus Christ are lukewarm. And Christ says, "I'll vomit you out of my mouth." So you can. It doesn't take much genius to figure out who's going to win the spiritual battle if the disciples of Lucifer are serving him passionately and the disciples of Jesus Christ are lukewarm and out to lunch. Who's going to win that spiritual confrontation? You know the answer. So all of this is escalating. But what is important is that the escalation is occurring as Bible prophecy is exponentially being fulfilled in rapid acceleration. But you have to understand Bible prophecy to know that. As I made reference to, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. That's one thing. You can study Ezekiel 38 and read about Russia, Iran, Syria. You can read Psalm 83 and read about those nations. And what are the nations that are arising with problems in the Middle East? The nations predicted by Ezekiel in Ezekiel 38, the nations predicted by, talked about in Psalm 83, and then in Revelation 13, and also talked about in Daniel chapter 9. You specifically see the prophetic warning of the revived Roman Empire, the fourth beast, emerging in the last days, and that's happening in our lifetime. And the characteristics of this revived Roman Empire, which will be the empire of the Antichrist, is that it will be composed of a triangular system, a one world government, a one world economic system, and a one world religion. And that is what is super converging in our time. The emergence of a one world government, a one world religion, and a one world economic system. Now, if you don't understand that, I don't know what to tell you. I have information for you. My book, The Day the Dollar Died, and DVDs, Are You Ready for the Coming One World Government, the Coming One World Economic System, the Coming One World Religion. I have tons of free articles for you to read, YouTubes for you to read to get informed. And many of you have access to other people that are teaching excellently on these things. But here's the deal. If you're going to choose to be clueless, and I'm going to be blunt, if you're going to choose to be an airhead, then don't complain when it comes down in a bad way. Because you are responsible for your life. God said that concerning your life, He said, I knew you before the foundation of the world. That implies that He knew who you were and are before the world was created. He knew you. I knew you before the foundation of the world, God said. And then God said, I called you for such a time as this, which means that God, in His infinite wisdom, called you to be alive in this time period. That means we know by that God has downloaded you with every spiritual and supernatural app necessary to accomplish His purpose, plan, and mission for your life. See, you as a person and me as a person, we've been downloaded with every app that we need to fulfill the mission impossible. But it's not impossible if we're operating in the dunamis power of the Holy Spirit. But we are required to activate the apps that God has placed in us and to learn how to use them. Those are our resources. That's what makes us effective. So God called you for such a time as this. That means He placed you in this nation or whatever nation you're listening to me in for a mission. Well, what's the mission? Well, He told us what the mission was. Jesus Christ said, fulfill the Great Commission. Go into all the world and preach the gospel. So that means evangelism. Make disciples of all nations. That means give people a biblical worldview. Teach them about what the Bible really means and connect the Bible to all aspects of reality, sexuality, economics, politics. The Bible is to be integrated with the real world. That's what it means by making disciples of all nations. Go into all the world and preach the gospel. And Jesus Christ also said, occupy until I come. Now, a lot of people seem to have forgotten that mandate. But to occupy until He comes this is not militaristic in the sense of physical armies. He means as a spiritual army, occupy the territory that God has given you to occupy, to preserve, to protect from the forces of darkness, because there are forces of darkness opposing the work of Christ in this world. The people in the occult know that. The Apostle Paul said, for our fight is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the dark unseen forces of wickedness in heavenly places. That's our arena of combat. but we fight those with spiritual weapons. How do we do that? Well, evangelism, the Word of God, and spiritual warfare with overwhelming force. We need to know how repentance and intercessory prayer and the power of prayer and evangelism can transform the course of a nation. Tragically, many believers in Jesus Christ are fatalists. They perceive themselves as victims. The Bible doesn't teach fatalism. The Bible doesn't teach victimhood. It's true that God has an end-time prophetic plan, and no one can undo what God's end-time prophetic plan is. It's sovereign. But within what constitutes God's end-time prophetic plan, God gives us a lot of freedom, a lot of room to maneuver. And therefore, we are never, never to be fatalistic. Because fatalism, we are assuming, for example, that America's, I hear people saying America's finished with God. What right do you have to make that determination? You have a finite mind. You don't put yourself in the place of God and say that America's finished with, God's finished with America or any other nation. God decides that. You're supposed to occupy until He comes, and He will decide. You don't make a presumptive conclusion. So the point is that we're not to be fatalistic. We're to occupy until He comes. And that means we do everything we can to release the power of God and the truth of God and the light of God into our nation. And that's through wisdom and intelligence and the Spirit of God and the Word of God. And when God gives you a plan, you're supposed to obey His commandment. So, here's how